I'm Hannah.
And I'm Natalie. Welcome to the Stride Sisters podcast. On today's episode, we're still at Princess Half Marathon weekend. Our recap will start next week, and we hope that you had a royal and wonderful time. With Marathon weekend registration quickly approaching, we all have a lot on our minds. To Dopey as your first marathon, or not to? That is the question. We both have a Dopey under our belt, but did so in different ways. So we have a discussion that will hopefully help you make that decision, or at least guide you in trying to make that decision for yourself. So lace up your shoes and step into the magic with us. So hard work has been done here. And for all my Disney Dreamlight Valley girlies, I planted 1,050 pumpkins on one of my floating islands. Yes. So pumpkins are really lucrative. You buy them from Goofy for 275 coins a pumpkin seed bag. And you sell them to Goofy for 664 per pumpkin. So
do you get multiple seeds per bag?
So technically no, but if you have gardening buddies, I have plenty of gardening buddies. They'll generate extra pumpkins off of it. So and I wish I counted it fully, but like some of my fields are in different areas, but had Rapunzel helping me. I was going to have Fairy Godmother, but I couldn't find her, and I knew it was time to go harvest the pumpkins earlier, and had some in like different stages of readiness. So by the time then I went to go, because you can only carry so many things in your inventory. So I had over 1,000 pumpkins in my little backpack, heavy bag. And definitely, I think at max I had planted 900. I'm not
judging you. The laughter is not judgment. The laughter is that this is Disney Farmville.
Oh, Mr. Natalie says that all the time. He's like, wow, just like you've brought back Poke Wars, you're bringing back Farmville through Disney Dreamlight Valley.
Yes, why are you poking me again on Facebook? No one pokes anyone anymore.
So the thing is that every so often, it'll taper out. And then somebody pokes me back for the first time like 23 weeks. And then I go through all my pokes and I poke everybody who I've ever had a poke war with. So I have like 15 poke wars going on.
I may just have to surrender because I do not want this to continue. I was okay with pokes dying. I have enough. No, I love you, but we have enough touch points that we do not also need to be having a poke war on Facebook.
You mean having slept like feet from each other in the last weekend wasn't enough?
Yep.
I just actually poke you, but
my God. Is that how you're going to wake me up in future endeavors, is real life pokes instead of my terrifying stand really close to your face, shaking your shoulder? Poke, 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 poke.
Maybe I'll just find like a clip from the Social Network because Zuckerberg, like I am Mark Zuckerberg. Something funny.
I don't think you want to be Mark Zuckerberg.
No, I don't, but I do want to poke people before they start to block me. Well, like my grandma popped up as an option to poke. I did not poke my grandma or my mom. That doesn't seem nice. My younger brother, I think he's the one who actually might have instigated the pokes returning, but it's just I forget all every so often, and then someone will poke me, and then it's game on, baby. I try not to be too annoying with it, of like poking you right back, where I try to put like a good couple hours in if I notice the notification pop.
There's way too much thought you're putting into this.
It's been really cold and snowy at home. Not that I'm there right now. So there's been extra time on my hands. And I can't go running when I don't want to break an ankle. So I left nowhere to go with that.
No, I don't understand. But, we're queens of like non-awkward, super awkward transitions. And you mentioned princess. We just did that. We don't really have a training update because we are pre-recording this, but by the time you're listening to this, we have completed Princess Half Marathon weekend. It was magical, I'm sure. And stay tuned next week to find out how that went. Did we crush our goals? Did we have fun? Did we get any injuries? Everyone knock on wood. Boop, boop, boop.
What's the beer cup like?
Yeah, so many
I'm
questions.
I am most interested. Was there glitter beer? Did I probably still get the pineapple cider? Did so many questions.
We'll
So
all know
little.
next week.
Indeed. Indeed we will.
Let's get through those race dates. We have 37 days until Springtime Surprise Weekend 2025. The end of the season is nigh.
Oh, she is.
We're getting real close. Real close.
I whiffed a couple times before in the week before Princess trying to get a bib, but I haven't lost hope yet.
Still possible.
It still is possible. Like, I'm mentally planning costumes, let's just say that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I can't wait. We have I do. I really can't. We have 191 days until Disneyland Halloween Half Marathon 2025. Your proof of time deadline is still and forever will be April 1st, 2025. Not a joke. Take it seriously, people. 240 days until Wine and Dine Half Marathon Weekend 2025. Your shirt deadline is also quickly approaching with March 26th, 2025, and your proof of time deadline being May 1st, 2025. 316 days until Marathon Weekend 2026. Club Run Disney registration is the most nigh with March 4th. 2025. How many days is that, Natalie?
That's a week away.
Have you made a decision?
No. Of course I haven't. I probably have themes at this point, but because we are talking to you from the past, I don't know what they are and if they are going to influence any decision making.
Mm-hmm. So likely you'll get to hear reactions to such stuff as if you're in Club or Disney as you're getting your invitation. And if you're in general registration, you'll still get a little heads up, I think, of what we think before you register.
Indeed.
And with that, general registration is March 11th, 2025, a week later. So that's why you get time. We have 366 days until Princess Half Marathon Weekend 2026. We're 1 year out-ish, basically. 1 year, 1 day. I can't believe we're already counting down. This is insane, Natalie. You are indeed diabolical.
I had to because I don't put the next year's date until this year's has passed, so it stops being as confusing. But since Princess is a week later next year, I had to include it because I think this is probably the only time that we're going to see something over 365 days for our countdown. Then they say, hold my beer.
Club Run Disney registration for that race is June 17th, 2025, and general registration is June 24th, 2025. So you have a little bit of a break. You get May off from anything other than sort of your proof of time for Wine and Dine, since May 1st is the last one. But then after that, you get like a month and a half of no crazy stress of Run Disney, basically.
I like how you
recovery.
Well, okay, okay, that's from Springtime itself.
Yeah,
because we still haven't gotten any Disneyland news for the Disneyland Half Marathon.
That's true. Yeah,
and I think that they're kind of holding that April-ish slot for if they get everything figured out with that. I'm gonna laugh if this news drops like right. I'm gonna laugh if we have egg on our face because they already have made a decision. But at this point in time, no. So if your wallet has a break, and it's nice because Club Run Disney renewals used to be in May. So it's kind of nice that your wallet gets a little break from the mouse for 3 months. between Marathon Weekend and Princess Half Marathon Weekend in terms of registrations.
Mhm.
Whatever happens between them with races and whatnot, I can't help you. We'll probably get actually the virtual series soon as
Yeah,
well, whatever the summer
probably.
virtual series is. I know before springtime because they usually have the medals at Springtime Surprise Weekend. So that'll be exciting to keep a lookout for.
On to some Disney news, which is, as you like to say,
Get it from someone else.
with love.
Yes. Oh, said with love. So, because I'm going to give you places to find it. The Morning Monorail podcast will give you your news on Monday mornings with a cheer and a charm.
Which
Love
means
my
it's
friend.
already out. If you're listening to this right now, it came out yesterday. So go, go, go.
Yes. Once you're done listening to this, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But Hyperion Adventures podcast also will cover Disney news toward the end part of their episodes. And occasionally we get it from the Dillos too, from Dillos Diz. But I believe Frank is in Disneyland for the first time right now. So, or I know it's close, if not like timey-wimey things. But that's exciting. So I can't wait to hear all about that later. Disney fun fact time, though. This we got a banger of. On the 25th of February in 1965, 13 Academy Award nominations are given to the one and only Mary Poppins.
We are
Which
big
ones?
fans.
Oh, yes. Which ones, you asked? Best Picture, which is a first for a Disney film. Best Actress in a Leading Role for Julie Andrews. Best Director for Robert Stevenson. Best Adapted Screenplay, Bill Walsh and Don DeGrati. Best Cinematography, Color. Best Art Direction and Set Decoration, Color. Best Sound. Best Film Editing for Cotton Warburton. Best Music, Music Score, Substantially Original for the Sherman Brothers, Richard M. Sherman and Robert B. Sherman. Best Music and Scoring of Music, Adaptation or Treatment, Irwin Kostal. Best Music and Original Song, Chim Chim Tree by Richard M. Sherman and Robert B. Sherman. Best Costume Design Color, Best Effects, Special Visual Effects, Peter Ellenshaw, Hamilton Lusky, and Eustace Lysette. These Academy Awards were held on April 5th of 1965.
Which
And
ones
maybe
did they win, Natalie? Which ones did they win?
I'd love to tell you. Best Actress, Julie Andrews. Duh.
Of course.
Best Film Editing. Best Effects in Special Visual Effects. Best Music, Original Song for Chim Chim Tree. And Best Music of a Substantially Original Score for the Sherman Brothers.
Whoop, whoop.
But
They
we got,
crushed it. That movie's great.
oh yeah. It's so funny because I know Julie Andrews had gotten passed up for the lead in My Fair Lady, and Mary Poppins, if she had gotten cast in My Fair Lady, she wouldn't have been available for Mary Poppins. And Walt Disney waited for her because she was pregnant at the time when he wanted to start like filming for it. So he told her, I guess they had a conversation about it, and she's like, "Oh, I'm pregnant right now, so I can't really film Mary Poppins." He goes, "It's okay, I'll wait." Which is such a flex that
What a star.
you can tell Walt Disney like, "Oh, you'll wait," and he'll wait. Incredible, absolutely incredible. I have a couple other fun facts because I knew we wouldn't have news. On this day in 2012, a time capsule with items from Disney's California Adventure is buried in that park by Disney Imagineering, and it's set to be open in 2037. We're a little over halfway there, which is disgusting to me, frankly. But because 2012 still feels like not that long ago, and 2037 feels like not that far in advance. But no.
It's wild, though, like, psychologically, 2037 feels further away than 2012, but actually it's the other way around.
You should talk to Mr. Natalie because he loves little
Oh.
brain puzzles like that. He's like, "Do you know you're closer to this than you are to kindergarten?" And it is a collective groan from everyone he speaks to. Like, "Oh, why? You're closer to being in your 60s than you are to..." I'm like, stop. Stop. So, good times. And then, this is maybe a little less fun of a fact. It's only fun because of my anecdote with it. On Today in 2020, Bob Iger steps down from being CEO effective immediately and is replaced by Bob Chapek. I was in the parks when this happened.
Tell us, was it chaos?
I remember sitting on the people mover with Maz and going, "Oh, that's weird." But it was right around, I think maybe it was like a day or so later, was when they had like sinking boats on the Jungle Cruise because people on Twitter were like, "Oh, one day into the term, and people are the boats on the Jungle Cruise are going down." But yeah, it was during my first princess weekend or the vacation part afterwards where
Mhm.
that all happened. So I thought that was kind of interesting that it overlapped an episode release day.
It is, some might consider weird flex, but for our listeners, maybe not.
It's a where were you when?
Yeah. Yeah,
Obviously, and that's
definitely.
it's a little bit more lighthearted of one of knowing that it's late February in 2020 and what else was going on when the world was starting to, burn. So
Mhm.
it's a little bit more lighthearted of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I don't think our episode drop date, it will not overlap when they actually close the parks, but
Mhm.
I think maybe when they start making the announcements, that might, yeah, that's weird.
Well, you know, speaking of big topics like this created a lot of buzz when it happened. Lots of conversation were being had, especially on the social media.
Yeah.
And currently, some other conversations are also happening on the social media with a certain registration shortly approaching. So, today we want to talk about Marathon Weekend, the races of Marathon Weekend, and whether or not you should dopey or not dopey as your first marathon. This is a hotly debated topic, like probably daily, honestly, at this point on Facebook pages, people saying like all kinds of different scenarios that they are in and considering trying to get into dopey. And I want to start with ultimately the choice is yours. You have your own future in your hands. And we're not saying you can't do anything because you have your own autonomy and stuff. We're just going to discuss our opinions, our viewpoints on what we've seen and what we would probably do for ourselves. Um, as always, like speak with your team if you have a coach or anything. Like use your resources, make an educated decision for yourself.
Exactly. It's personal and you know yourself and your body best.
Mm-hmm.
So
You
in
should.
terms of yeah, one would hope. In terms of what you think you can handle, what you think you can commit to. But we'll talk a little bit about
Mm-hmm.
that aspect of things.
Yeah.
Because I think that even my standpoint may surprise you a
Yeah.
little bit.
Let's give the people our background a little bit of like not why we're qualified, I guess, but like the viewpoint we're coming from.
Yeah. So if you guys didn't know, for some reason, this is the first one that you are tuning into. First episode, welcome. But we both are coming off of doing the Dopey Challenge in 2025.
Mm-hmm.
For Hannah, she did her first Dopey, but not her first marathon.
Correct.
For Natalie, she did her second Dopey, third marathon. But my first Dopey did involve the Walt Disney World, or was part of Marathon Weekend. But my first marathon was part of Dopey in 2023. So opposite ends of the spectrum here in terms of that
Mm-hmm.
experience. And we're going to talk Dopey, but this also applies to Goofy, and I can go on a rant about that later. It's a loving lamp because hashtag Goofy. We love Goofy in this household.
That's where we're coming from.
Yes, that's where we come from with
That's our
this.
background.
So do we want to start positive or kind of like think, let's go all sorority style, pro con pro.
Okay.
Because I don't want to end on a negative note, but I also don't want to start on a kind of like heavier negative note.
So we're
So
going full sandwich.
full sandwich
Yeah.
it.
Okay. What's your first pro?
I think that having the weight of Dopey, which if this is the first time you're tuning in,
Real quick.
the Dopey challenge is, I feel like I'm saying the pacer and I'm in high school gym. Like the pacer is a test where, where you have to go touch. Yeah. Okay. But the Dopey challenge is a 4-day challenge consisting of 48.6 miles. That has a 5K Thursday, 10K Friday, half marathon Saturday, and marathon on Sunday. So,
Yes, correct. Good job.
whole shebang. But so the Dopey Challenge, having the weight of that and knowing like it does,
It's a serious commitment.
it's a serious commitment because for a marathon, they always say respect the distance.
Mhm.
So that means, do your training, do your due diligence. Like you can't really fake a marathon in a lot of ways. Like you can, in terms of you can get through it, but in terms
Mhm.
of enjoying it. But um it definitely makes you take the training a lot more seriously because you get to that point in that week of training where 13 it's after 13 miles and every long run after is over 13 miles. And if you're like me, a little bit more about my background is that I had one half marathon under my belt before I signed up for the Dopey Challenge. So I and how I came to that decision actually to sign up to take another step back is I knew I wanted to do my first marathon in 2023. So I was like, okay, I'll do the marathon standalone. And then the person I was supposed to travel with was going to do the 5K and 10K. And then I looked at myself and I went, how mad are you going to be if you don't do the half and get Dopey? Because in my head, what I was going to do was my first Dopey would be in 24.
Mhm.
And that's how it was going to go. I was going to make sure I got that marathon in 23. And then in 24 would be the first time I would do Dopey. At the time, I was not yet engaged, knew it was coming though. So but hadn't even started thinking about wedding planning besides the fact that I knew it would be on my horizon. So, um, I didn't really, because now I look back and it's like, oh, you didn't do Dopey I did Goofy in 24 because I was 5 months before my wedding, 5.5 months. So I knew that I couldn't commit to that. So anyway, to how the tables turn in a couple ways. So that's how I came to the conclusion with the half marathon under my belt that was how I wanted to do Dopey because, well, if I'm traveling with someone, I want to do the 5K and 10K with them. Okay, am I going to sleep in on half marathon morning?
Mhm.
No, I'm gonna do the whole Dopey challenge. So all that said, I knew that um, I wasn't quite as good about training before that first half marathon, and I knew that I needed to buck up, and I kind of had to prove to myself that I could kind of be a little bit better about training. Um, before really before the official Dopey challenge training period started. So I kind of was able to trust myself a little bit more with that and like, oh, like, I went out and like ripped a 10 miler, not ripped in the way I went fast, just like felt good, like was good. And I was like, okay, I feel like some people say that like once you're maybe more ready to take on that type of challenge afterwards, if that's where you are. I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that knowing what I know now, but whatever.
Mhm.
Um, all that to say is that you have to take the training more seriously when you have back to backs and you have all that you have to, um, because once you get to that point where that threshold is, oh, this is all further than I've ever run before. Um, it's kind of scary. So to be successful, you want to take the training pretty seriously.
I feel like the weight of it being so big is it depends on who you are. Like for some like that obviously all these pros and cons are probably like it depends on who you are. Um because I could like for me that is a pro of like it's serious.
Yep.
I don't want to hurt myself. I'm going to commit kind of thing. You should also do the same for all of your races. But there's something that comes with such it's not just the distance, but it's the especially it's the, like, clout, I guess, like, in this community of what Dopey represents. Uh, you wanna be able to finish it. You wanna feel like you when you get that medal that you're, like, showing it off and, like, you wanna be able to do it. You don't wanna be hurt. Like, I've been in the injured boat before as someone who didn't do Dopey as their first one, and I can I can see that. It's also just, like, really exciting, so that can help with, like, your motivation of staying on top of things is like you're really excited. My very first Run Disney, I didn't do so well, even though I thought the excitement of like getting to go to Disney and do all this stuff would like carry me through. And that taught me a lesson of like, you really have to understand what your motivators are. Is that something that will motivate you? I thought it would, but it actually wasn't as motivating as I thought it would be, versus like once I tried to do a marathon and didn't commit as much as I should, I did not respect the distance, I guess. There was a lot of things that went into it. It's a long story, but uh I don't ever want to experience that again. And so, not that I ever want someone like fear to be the reason that you are motivated, but for some people that works. So,
It lights a
know
fire under
yourself.
your butt,
Yeah.
your glutes
Mhm.
in a lot of ways, which I think can be a pro,
Mhm.
but it also can be a con.
Yeah. I was going to say I see it kind of as a con, especially because so here's the thing. It is a very intense training commitment to commit to Dopey. Way more than I ever committed to or should have committed to when I ran a standalone marathon when I ran Chicago. Um, and that's a big commitment. Running a standalone marathon, you're committing, especially towards the end, you're committing, especially if you're not a fast runner, you could be committing 3 to 6 hours a day of just running. And depending on when that is, especially with Disney, since that's in the winter, that could be hard to schedule in with life, laundry, groceries, like all the other things you have to get done. And weather, ice, snow, like trying to do that. And then if you're going to add Dopey on top of that, we've talked about this with back to backs. You're now not only having to do that one day at the end of the week on top of your like weekday runs, but you're probably having to you're at least 2 days of many hours of running in a row back to back, plus some shorter days of walking and or running and maintaining your fitness. It really does start to stack up if you're in a situation like Natalie where she was getting ready for a wedding. There is a lot of stuff you have to commit to make that like pull that off. So can you balance the two things? Did you start a new job? Have you moved recently? Like there's all kinds of things. Natalie's laughing because I think she was doing multiple of these things.
I was
But
doing between both of my dopies, I was doing almost all of these.
she's like, I made bad choices. Good choices, but bad choices. So, understanding your schedule and like, do you like, I'm a person who really enjoys, I come home from work, I like to have like an hour or so at when I get home to just be an absolute potato on the couch. I want to think about nothing. I want to scroll all the social media that I had muted all day. I want to watch YouTube videos that are absolutely brain numbing. And I want to just not. I want to decompress from all of it. I couldn't do that while I was training for Dopey. You can if you get strategic, like Natalie runs in the morning, so that leaves her more time maybe in the evening, but then you also have to go to bed earlier if you're going to wake up earlier, depending on what your work schedule is. And I found myself starting to cheat myself a little bit on sleep sometimes because I would skip that when I came home from work, and my juxtaposition was, "Oh, well, that I can watch that trash TV I want if I run on the treadmill." Which, like, I like running on the treadmill. I kind of don't. It kind of depends on my mood. I've come a long way. And but then I would at night, because there was all that stuff that I couldn't do or I hadn't done or that I liked to do, I would do that at night and stay up later and later. And my partner would have to be like, "Stop it. Go to bed." No.
Like revenge procrastination.
Yes, revenge procrastination on future Hannah. So that I would say is like the other side of that coin of really understanding the time commitment. How many hours would you say a week we spent in training for Dopey?
Ooh, I like this question
Because
because I can give you numbers if I pull up my spreadsheet
you
real
pull up your
quick.
spreadsheet, I'm going to ballpark it while you pull up your spreadsheet. So when I was training for Dopey, my coach had me doing 4-ish days of running and 2 to 3-ish days of strength, depending on the mix and the week and such. Strength days, an hour each time. Running, longer than an hour because my weekly mileage after base training, like when we was actually in the Dopey block, I was probably running up to an hour and a half. I'm not fast. So, or like, I'm gonna just pull that back. I'm not like elite or anything. I'm
No, 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 leave the Baymax reference. I love it.
okay.
We love
But
Baymax.
I was on the treadmill for at least an hour and a half from weekday runs. So then you've got the long runs, like I said, on the weekends, which are probably uh one would probably be like it started to get to the point where 2 hours felt like a short run. I'm just gonna put that out there. So if 2 hours sounds like a really long time like it did when I started running, like it sounded like abhorrently long, then this is your reality check that maybe Dopey is not for you because 2 hours starts to feel like a short run. And then we'd have a run that was like 4 or 5 hours or longer. So it was set we'll go with 4 because I'll be generous. Let's see, we were at 4 plus 2, that's 6 plus at least another 3, so we're at 9, probably another hour and a half. We're at 10 and a half plus another 3. So we're at like 14, roughly 14 hours a week is my guess. What does your spreadsheet say?
Okay, so context to Natalie's grand spreadsheet is that this only counts running, walking activities. So I obviously log my strength workouts. I log them in Truth Coach. Log them, but this is just purely mileage. So time is based on pure mileage. So since Dopey training officially began, meaning when Galloway starts it, beginning of July, um, over 6,000 minutes of running activity, which
So what
comes
does that
out
average out to? Sorry.
it comes out to over 100 hours, and that's over 6 months. So, let's say 26 weeks. So, and this is pure like running activity. So, it ends up about 4 hours a week, which, you know, and okay,
But
so
you're also
again,
averaging out sort of base like early weeks, and in the early weeks, your time commitment is quite low with the Galloway. You're
right.
doing 30 or 45-minute runs during the week, and then probably another 30 or 45-minute worth of running on the weekend. So in the early weeks, you're at like just over 2 hours maybe,
Yeah, if you're going, yeah,
but it
maybe.
but it increases fast once it starts increasing.
Exactly. Like I'm looking at, oh shoot, I just averaged the wrong thing.
And we didn't
Um,
count your strength training, which I would add a 3 hours probably.
oh yeah, for sure. And then also that doesn't count if I like, basically this is just like my purely like tracked, if I go on a walk and don't track it, that's pretty rare. But if I'm looking at my last simulation, that was 9.5 hours. So, and that's my last one. So it was a 4, 5, 12, and 24. That was 9.5 hours. Again, that doesn't count like the time for like calisthenic, like any warm up, because that's, again, this is just what comes off my watch after I finish running. So any kind of warm up, any like little strength training I do before and after, or like
Any cool
mobility I do
down?
after. Exactly. This is simply pure mileage. So it's a big time commitment. It's a very big time commitment, and I think that's something that pulls Dopey as your first full into almost the con category is something that caught me by surprise, and I'll shout this from the rooftops, was how long the half simulation part takes. If you want to go on a 7-mile walk, say that we're looking at the 7 and 17, that takes a while. It's not a short time. Especially, or even if because in the last 2 years between my Goofy and my Dopey and my most recent Dopey, I run those at like a slower, more controlled pace, but it takes time. It still takes time, and I think that that was my biggest surprise going into all of it was the 8.5 and 20, for example, as part of the simulation. Like, that 8.5 is not anything to, like, slough off. Like, yes, it's if you take away the 20 part of it, it's
Uh-huh.
great. It's actually it's like, oh, it's 8.5, it's great. But then you're also if you're doing this, you're looking down the barrel of distances you've never run before. So there's like I'm scared of 20, like because I until this past training block did like rarely had a good 20. Like my 20s were always like kind of rough. But you're looking at this distance you've never done before. Um, the things that you've learned throughout your training block and will hopefully have learned by that point, and you're like, wow, I have to do that for the first time, but I also have to watch my legs, but I also have to run on tired legs. So I think that that's something that could come with a little bit, and it's like I think regardless of which way you go, that it's a really good, I mean, almost swinging back to a pro in that way. It's a good lesson to learn that you can't take your long runs too like fast. You really don't want to do that.
Mhm.
And dopey because you're so tired, right? You're the point is to be tired is that almost teaches you that from the get-go. So it just went into a pro. But I just remember being absolutely bamboozled by and I had the information in front of me. I looked at the training plan before I pressed pay. I made sure that it was going to, and even though there was a lot of unprecedented things I could not have anticipated when I pressed that review and pay button, that came through the next several months of my life, like I made sure that it was something that I could at least like that I had. It wasn't like as an example, at the time I was still like a traveling consultant, except I was really low on travel by that point. It was like maybe every couple months or maybe every 6 weeks. So it wasn't like years prior where I was traveling every single week, where that probably that wouldn't have worked for me to do. I know that it would. I mean, I was pretty good about doing my workouts on Saturdays when I was at home from my week of travel, but I know that trying to get a long run in would have been really hard. So I knew that I would have time for it, but at the same time, I remember being caught off guard a little bit when the reality came to get me of what 8.5 and 20 looked like because it was 8.5 beforehand. So I think that that's an additional pressure. And if you're like me and you haven't done too many halves before you take on your first full,
Me.
um,
None.
yeah, and the idea of just going out and doing like 9 miles is still kind of a big deal. Um, it's like not impossible, but it's still like not and I actually to take that back, I still kind of feel like it's a big deal. So I'm not saying it's like not, but like, I now have lost count of how many times I've gone over the half marathon distance in training. I probably the spreadsheet will tell me, but I've lost count.
Mhm.
Having just completed my 10th half marathon this past weekend, hair flip. But it's kind of like, but at the time, like it was like I had a count of how many times I have exceeded this distance.
Mhm.
It's definitely, it adds a little layer of like when you're already going through new distances for you for the first time, it definitely adds another layer of like, ooh, yee, to have dopey as part of it.
Yeah. I feel like basically everything is a pro con is like all in your perspective. I think what did we just talk about? A con, kind of?
Yeah, we just talked about it.
I don't even remember.
We talked about the commitment.
Yeah. I think when we're talking about the commitment too, what I really want to talk about is kind of some of the I would when you're, in a relationship and like or you're like on a dating app and you're like looking for green flags, red flags, like trying to find the things. I feel like with Dopey and Goofy, but mostly Dopey, there's a lot of like hype and I said clout earlier around the event of Dopey. And sometimes I think it makes people blind to their red flags. Um so I think it's really like I think that's kind of a con of like how popular the Dopey challenge has gotten at this point because it gets this like excitement, this whole like thing built up around it that makes you want to just like do it without thinking. So I just want to caution people like don't let like if you find out about Dopey on the day of registration, Like, no. Unless you are an experienced, I'm gonna straight up put it out there. If you find out about Dopey on registration day, unless you are an experienced marathon or ultra runner, do not just like sign up for Dopey. I don't think that's a good idea. um, but really, like we talked about, kind of off the tail of like the commitment and stuff. There's the commitment. There's the cost. Like, don't. I really want to encourage people. Do I always make the best financial decisions? No, but I do want to encourage everyone because Disney can be a trap that's easy to fall into overspending. You get this registration, it's a year out, then you also have to consider it's not just you're running this distance, you are committing to being in the Disney Orlando area for almost a week. To be
Yeah.
honest, with how many days you're running, you got to get there early for the expo. And then do you want to go to the parks at all? Some people don't, but a lot of people do. And so you're talking hotels unless you're local and you have a friend nearby that you can stay with. You're talking food, which is also part of training and stuff. You also have to consider with your training when you decide on that trip, like, well, do I really need to be trained for 48.6 or do I need to be trained for more than that because I'm also going to walk 15 miles every day at a park? Like, you have to really think through what's a good idea, what's a bad idea, what your actual plan is. And I just think don't let the hype get to you. Don't let the the excitement and everything overpower like your sense of logic.
Dopey is not the end all be all. And I know this sounds hypocritical AF coming from two fresh Dopies.
Mhm.
But reminder, I did a goofy in there in the
Mhm.
middle. And I remember, and I'm going to be honest, this is something I've definitely changed my opinion on, but I remember always thinking, I'm like, I don't know if I would do, I don't know, is it going to feel like a letdown? You know, and I, I'm a little not, I'm a little embarrassed that I used to think that. I think it was always a question. It was never that I thought it actually would. It was just like, oh, like, am I going to feel that way? But, for scheduling purposes, and I've told the story of my goofy 2024 bib, the bib that wasn't supposed to happen, the back to back coast to coast that wasn't supposed to happen. And I think that in a lot of ways, like, Goofy, first of all, is awesome. Goofy's awesome. But Dopey is not the end all be all. Doing the marathon standalone. First of all, you're smarter than us. Also, if you do the 5K, 10K half, I know a lot of people during most weekends, the 10K and half is its own challenge. Or with springtime, it's 5K, 10K, 10 miler. So in a lot of ways, I know that it's like, oh, well, you're just not doing the marathon. It's a big to do. Okay. And secondly, like, and I think that overall, the Run Disney community is really supportive, right? Where people don't actually poo poo you. And if they do that, they're lame. The people don't poo poo you, say, oh, you just did Goofy. I did.
Rude.
Yeah. First of all, for the most part, I never heard that. And like, I never felt like I had to couch it with, oh, but I've done Dopey before. When I saw their Dopies, I'm like, as we're waddling through the parks, I'm like, you're walking real good. And like they
Mhm.
see my marathon t-shirt, I see theirs. It's like, you're walking real good. Right?
Mhm.
Like it's not something that you have to evaluate what's best for you and what actually works into your schedule. And I think when you actually get there to the parks during that weekend, it's not like people are like, look at your green and orange bib or your whatever the marathon colors bib are and go, "Ugh, no.
If
Peop
someone is thinking that, they probably haven't done what you're trying to do because no one who's been through any of those experiences, running a full, running a goofy, running a dopey, running any of those races, like they're either someone that their opinion shouldn't matter to you or they're a jerk. Or both.
I'll catch them out back behind the porta potties where no one can see it. Right? So just don't like it's not the end all be all. I promise it's not it's not just Goofy. That's why we're really passionate about the word standalone here. Right? It's not just the 5K, it's not just the half. It's a
Mhm.
standalone because it's what matters to you and what your journey is. For a lot of people, getting to the start line for a 10K is like that is a Herculean effort. And that's why we're very cognizant of saying standalone because I don't want to say it doesn't matter because there's like obviously there's the fun of doing all 4 races the whole weekend. There's the fun of that, right? We do that a
Mhm.
lot, but it's not the end all be all. Trust me, it's not the end all be all. And when you get that medal around your neck, whether it's you're getting multiple, whether you're getting a single beauty around your neck, you're getting those ears put on your head. It's just an incredible feeling. And nobody worth your worth an opinion of you will ever look down on you.
Yeah. We don't need those people.
Yeah, no, we don't need those people in our lives.
Mhm.
Because you also ran a marathon, right? Something that more of a consideration slash like can be a really pro and con is there's all we talked about training hours. We talked about all that, but there's all the other hours that you have to put into learning things.
Oh my gosh,
Um,
so much to learn about long distance running.
and if you've trained properly for a half, which I'll give myself like 3/4 credit on maybe for that first half of I got to 13 miles before my first half. But did we know what fueling was? Barely. We had these gummies. We had a goo in our possession, but we were scared of. But anyway, there's a lot to learn about fueling, shoe rotation, not letting your butt cheeks get chafed from bad pants. There's stuff that like you just inherently learn throughout the process.
Mhm.
You learn what you eat best before a long run. You learn what, and that's stuff you're gonna have to learn
My
anyway.
my favorite one, I'm just gonna jump in here real quick, is learning when you have to poop.
Yeah, true.
You you know, it
When you
might
don't
be gross, but it's something you gotta learn.
you got to know when you don't trust it.
Mhm.
You don't trust the fart. But so there's a lot of other stuff you have to learn. You should be strength training. I didn't before my first dopey. The fact that I didn't come out with injuries is a miracle, to be quite honest with you. I had done
Exception,
an
not the rule.
yes. I would say that like I had done enough due diligence of like run your long run slower, like run like whatever. I had done enough due diligence with that I knew that like we're getting through, right? So the fact that cuz I was afraid, I was afraid to train legs and have being sore legs take away from my longer runs. But, I or not even longer
It
runs, but
doesn't.
even my short ones. It doesn't. And
I
first
think
of
it
all,
contributes actually to a more realistic feeling.
true. Also, if my butt hurts when I start my speed workout, that's just what Kristen intended for me.
Mhm.
That's just what I'm supposed to do, right? And then I didn't know as much of what to do with upper body. So having done like there's a lot to learn of like, more mobility versus static stretching. There's stuff to learn about moisture wicking fabrics. There's stuff to learn about like what socks work the best. And when you compound all these, and all this other learning, because a lot of it is learned through experience. Experience will be your best teacher. There's a lot of learning, and it compounds when you do a multi-day distance. Because we're talking dopey, because because that's the big upcoming registration. So that's what we're talking. But I think that this also is applicable to multi-day challenges. Which again, hypocrite here took me 6 half marathons before I ran one without a race the day before, right? Have done one standalone half. Have yet to do a standalone full. It's coming this year. So again, this is talking from like conversations I've either had with myself or like experiences I've had because you'd think that I would be all like, "Yep, you can do it." And I am. Like I do believe that if you put your mind to it, you can do it. However, I think there are big caveats that
Mhm.
are things that I learned the hard way, things that I learned, even not the hard way, but kind of when I was in the thick of the training was like, what did I get myself into?
Mhm.
What is this? And the date just kept cutting closer. So I'm like, all right, it's time to strap in and do what I can to,
Mhm.
I don't need to go on how the derailing happened right now, but it just compounds a lot with the multi-day aspect of things where it doesn't in the same way when you're doing a standalone full.
Mhm. I also think it changes this. I think this could be maybe a pro for Dopey is that when you're running Dopey, if you're not Natalie, then generally you are not shooting for like a speed PR on your marathon. Um, and like I wasn't. I was just hoping to be happy and healthy, all happy and healthy. And I think that took a little bit of pressure off. Like there's a ton of pressure put on because of the commitment and the distance and not wanting to get hurt and all the things you have to do. But at the same time, I think a little bit of pressure does also come off knowing that you have to take everything easy pretty much like to make it to the end because the whole thing is the task now. Knowing that you have the other races and coming up with a strategy for that. And whether you do the standalone or you do Dopey, there is the built-in like joy of running in Disney. Period. You're gonna have more like character stops and things that are gonna keep you entertained. So that's like neutral, I guess. But I think Dopey adds and takes off pressure for different reasons.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's so okay. In my defense, all of my marathons so far have been in the context of like a multi-day challenge. So that is like we're swinging with the bat on.
Mhm.
So in terms of like going for monster PR, it kind of just happens,
Yeah.
okay? Like that's
Well,
what I'm used to right now.
yeah, and if it's your first one, either scenario is an automatic PR because you've never run the distance before.
This is true.
So, maybe
Cuz
that takes the pressure off, to be honest.
yeah, that is true. I think that I remember like walking to the start line of my very first marathon during Dopey in 23, and I was more nervous for the half. Um, but because by the time I got to the start line of the full, I was like, I got this. I knew because the course had been yellow flagged that I knew what my drop dead time that I had to be off course was 12:45 because it was 7 hours and 45 minutes from the start of the race. I knew I was starting toward the front of my corral in D. So I knew that I had buffer time. I knew that I knew I was going to be fine. So I think that that does take some of the pressure off. I think also one of the pros I'd say of Dopey is that there's so many people in the same boat as you doing Dopey.
Yeah.
Like doing Dopey who are in the same boat of I'm tired, my legs are tired. We're just here to like have a ball and have fun and whatnot. So it's that understanding when you see somebody else with like a t-shirt on or like the Dopey bib, obviously when you're on the course, but like it's that understanding of like, yeah, I'm tired. You're tired. We're all tired. Right. And not to say that obviously people doing the full and goofy are also tired, but it's kind of like that understanding of like when you see other people doing Dopey around, it's like, well, and you get rained on during a race. It's like, well, that happened. Like, right, we're here.
Mhm.
Um, I think that it's kind of nice because I think that also I think that, like, being able to mimic some of the fun around you and, like, seeing other dopies who are like, like, who are having a ball, like, rode Everest twice or did this thing doing all these character stops and stuff. I think that that does take off some of the pressure of, like, you're getting through 26.2 miles, and most people, me aside, aren't going in, like, out for blood. This year was a little different. I felt like I had just the unfinished business that I did, and it was kind of a let's see what I can do, like hold up, let them cook, um, type of aspect of it to
Yeah.
see like,
You
okay, and
you and I were in redemption mode.
yeah, it was a redemption of my prior dopey of a lot of things going wrong, and it's funny because a lot of those same things went wrong just at different times this year, plus like a little extra flair of other things, and it to me, it was like the ability to conquer them. The ability to do it, like, right, the ability to conquer it. So, um, one thing Hannah brought up earlier, this is like a kind of a sidetrack, but Hannah brought up earlier the like financial commitment of Dopey beyond registration and the extra days in the parks and whatnot,
Mhm.
but also prepping and because we can. we can chirp all we want about like, yeah, like do this, like blah, blah. But like obviously like your financial situation is yours and yours alone, you and your partner's your family financial decision. But there's the additional like cost to, you know, extra shoes. Because
Mhm.
if you're wearing the same shoes for the half and the full, I'm gonna have a talk with your mother. Um, yeah.
We don't advise.
Right? There's the extra shoes. There's because Once Upon a Marathon, I love Amanda, first of all, and I'm gonna plug her because she has gone through a very honest breakdown of what Dopey cost for her and her husband when they did it in 22. And she will very honestly, I would love to have her on for like a budgeting episode.
Oh my gosh,
I
yes.
also a speculate and spiral. Like we're just gonna have a series, like a quarterly meetup with her. Love Amanda. But she will kind of go through like, when should you change your shoes out? When, the additional socks, the additional, you know, clothing. Like for some
Mhm.
things, it's like, wow, like if I'm doing like one long run a week, like I need one pair of good leggings. If you're doing 4 days back to backs and you live where it's cold out and you're not getting away with wearing shorts for any of those, you need more than one pair of pants.
Or if it's hot like it is here, I need that many pairs of shorts.
Right. Right. Both sides of the coin versus, and it sounds silly. It's like, okay, well, like it's not like those are one time use things because they're not. I'd hope for most
But they
people.
are expensive. They're a big investment generally.
Yes. So sometimes like the costs start adding up because it's our lovely free sport is expensive
Mhm. It is not you in one pair of shoes.
in the
And
open roads. No, it's not. I wish. We all wish, but because then there's things that you want to do to injury prevent, and that does, the shoe rotation. I'm very passionate about shoe rotation,
Mhm.
but it involves having. I don't even know how many lines I have on the spreadsheet of different shoes. If I'm buying a pair of Brooks, and even if I buy them on sale, and then I got to get the inserts because my foot is a flipper. It's just a flat flipper.
Mhm.
Um,
And
that
beyond shoes, there's so much more. Like, obviously, you said socks and things that you think about for your feet because it's a running sport, so it affects your feet. But you're gonna need we talked about the chafing. You're gonna need anti-chafing products. You're gonna need tape probably. You're gonna need fuel. Have we ever talked about how expensive fuel is? Because it's really expensive.
Mr. Natalie one time when I posted my fuel recap, I think it might have been for 11. Because some of the price stickers were on there, for the ones I bought from Fleet Feet. He was like, "Is that like $10 of fuel?" He's like, "I don't care. It's just interesting to do the math on that."
Mhm.
Right? Like it's like, and that's just for one run.
I spent hundreds of dollars on fuel over the course of training for Dopey.
Yeah. And again, some of this, if you're doing again, like kind of taking it back to marathon v dopey,
Mhm.
marathon slash, or v goofy in a way, like some of this, like if you're doing your due diligence, like you're fully getting trained for the marathon, you're still going to spend this. Like, I don't think that I'm going to be like a freaking savings queen because I'm not doing a race the day before Chicago this fall. I'm not going, like, some of this I don't, is kind of set in terms of, but it's also trial and error costs money. Um,
Mhm.
when I try to look out for bargains, or, when the feed has like, here's a sample that you can buy for like $2 with your order. I'm like, oh, whatever. What the heck? I'll
Mhm.
try it. And actually, for the most part, most of mine have worked out so far.
Yeah.
Not stuff I've like purposely looked to rebuy, but
Honestly, though, fuel, when it doesn't work out for you, is the most painful experience for many reasons because, if it doesn't sit well in your tummy, you're gonna be in pain later, and if it doesn't sit well going down, like when I tried Spring Energy, which tons of people love, but I hate because it's like applesauce-y kind of, uh, I didn't even make it halfway through, and I threw it in the trash, and that was soul crushing.
yeah, if you don't like your peanut butter and Morton sandwich, like a Morton's like $4 each.
Yeah.
So, like, there's the incremental costs, right? Because remember, if you're simulating the half on Saturday and then you're doing your long run Sunday, you need 2.5, 3 hours of fuel on Saturday, and then you need, or whatever it is, but you need enough to get through that run, and then you also need it for your next run. So it's just it adds up, and you don't want to skimp on fueling your shorter runs, right? You want to make sure those are fueled
That's
because
gonna bite you in the butt.
it will bite you. I also think that that's the best place to try, like a new
Oh,
brand
mhm.
new fuel is a shorter run because you can bail on your 45-minute run so way more easily than you can, but it's like if it hurts my
Yeah.
tummy, first of all, I'm gonna finish it out, I'll be fine. But, like, I can bail and decide I'm not doing the run because it hurt that much, and I
Mhm.
could just do it the next day.
Whereas if you're running 20 and you're at the 10-mile mark, so you're halfway, you still have to run back, or maybe if you live somewhere like I do, I could probably call an Uber, but you probably have to run back. That's not gonna be fun.
True. And, like, this is silly because this is not, like, mandatory by any means, but the part of the zeitgeist with Run Disney is costumes.
Yep.
And I do pride myself on being a
Thematic
re
queen.
thematic queen, but, like, budget-friendly queen.
Yeah.
Not always. Sometimes I've been getting a little bit more loose with it, but in terms of having pieces I can reuse, I am very passionate about that.
Mhm.
The pants I wore during my first marathon, I probably have worn in almost 10 more costumes because they were black leggings. They
Strong
were pretty
pants.
easy. They're pretty easy, right? So I'm very passionate about that, but like that's an incremental cost. And for me, marathon weekend in 23 was the first time I ever costumed. So for me, it was like that was the new avenue because I felt like that was what I was missing in ways of like, oh, like again, that's not mandatory. Like you can get through Run Disney races perfectly wearing your normal stuff. But I think that a lot of people if they're going to do Dopey, they want to have the full experience. That's how I went into it of, this is what I feel like I'm missing. I feel like I'm missing the costume stuff cuz my name is too small to read on the bottom of my bib. Or it's just like, sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. Versus during marathon weekend, I got recognized from a wine and dine costume I did, from my Mary Poppins wine and dine costume. She's like, "Wait, I saw you." Because she's that day during wine and dine, she's like, I saw her later at the bus stop and she's like, "Oh, you were Mary Poppins this morning, weren't you?" And then I
Mhm.
saw her again during marathon weekend. So, hey, girl, first of all, um, I did not catch her name, but she's like, "You were Mary Poppins at wine and dine, weren't you?" And I met you there. I'm like, "Yeah." So, like, stuff like that, like, I felt like having the full experience. Or when I was the chimney sweep, I felt like it's both times I have soot on my face, but both like when I was the chimney sweep, I was like people were like, "Oh my god, I love it." And that was a pretty relatively inexpensive costume, first of all. I got a hat, a little ascot, and then the chimney sweep itself was like 15 bucks maybe, from a costume prop store. And then the other stuff literally was what I wore for the marathon. The black tank top and black pants. Easy. Anyway, all that to say is that, a lot of people are like, if I'm going to have this experience, I really want to have it. So that is something, to think about, the different recovery things. So like there's these incremental things related to doing Dopey versus a marathon. And then I guess it's almost funny. It's like where you're putting custody of Goofy, like under the Dopey umbrella or under like the stand or like its own thing or like under the standalone marathon.
I
Like,
think it's its own thing.
oh, for sure. It's just that, well, I think that that's a consideration even to go from like,
From
cause then,
standalone to Goofy.
yeah, I think, cause then, I mean, we've talked a little bit about pressure,
Mhm.
but
I felt pressure for my
because
first one. I felt prepared. I felt like I wasn't making an insane decision, but there was definitely something around, like, the hype and everything that was, like, really made me, like, go for it.
well, it's also the pressure that, like, makes you worry where you don't think you're going to, meaning the half for
Mhm.
Dopey or Goofy or the 10K for a 2-course challenge, where it's
Yeah.
like, "Oh god." Because it's like it makes you overanalyze every moment during that little thing because it's like, "If I feel like this and I have a marathon tomorrow, oh
Mhm.
god. Oh my god." Right? And it's just like, "Okay, settle down, first of all." We're having, like, therapy with myself to and from me. But there is the additional or, like, I mean, the pressure, last year this is kind of going into train, but I promise there's a point. We're making our way around the Magic Kingdom right now. But the pressure on the half marathon during Dumbo Double Dare last year because I had done Goofy. I
Mhm.
had done the other races, but I did not you don't get that coast to coast, like, it doesn't you don't get that coast to coast unless you cross the half marathon finish line,
Mhm.
and doesn't matter you had a good 5K, doesn't matter you had a good 10K, if you don't cross that half marathon finish line, you don't get coast to coast, and for me, I was not doing Halloween was Halloween on the table? It was on the table by that point, but not that it was on the table for me personally, but it was an option, right? Like you don't get all this. It's not that all that would be for naught, because I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all, actually. I think that there's like lessons you learn from all these different experiences, and you still did a freaking marathon the week before. Bye. But like there's that additional pressure of these couple days prior. If like this doesn't go well, like, and I don't want to, like I don't believe that not finishing is like, oh, like obviously it's sad, and it's something that like I feel my heart goes out to people who have gone through that and have, made. I think it's a very brave decision to pull yourself before
Mhm.
off of a course because you don't think that it's healthy for you to finish. I think that that's probably one of the bravest things that you can do,
Mhm.
because it means that you put your ego aside and you did not put it all on the line, like an injury, something hurtful, for a medal.
Which is not what I did for Chicago. So I applaud you.
Yeah.
I did
And
end up in the medical tent, and I would not advise others to do the same.
don't forget about the broth feeding man. You don't need that's not remember what gets you there, and it's not good things. But the point being is that there's like that additional pressure, and there's it because there's already pressure about lining up for 26.2. Let
Mhm.
me just tell you that. There's already pressure. Like it's already, and this is coming from somebody who is exceptionally hard on themselves in the first place. So like there's
Yay,
already
anxiety. Woo!
yeah, yeah, yeah. But there's that additional pressure already of lining up for 26.2, and there's also like the pressure of like for me to have done the dopey challenge, like I gotta get this. So it's having been through that, now, like I like a more experienced marathoner now. I don't know if I can. No.
I think you are.
I am a more experienced marathoner. I have to own that. In a lot of ways, like I think 3 under the belt makes you pretty.
Yeah, I don't you don't have to get up to the, like, 20 plus marathons to be considered experienced,
Yeah, it's just still weird.
considering most people don't even do one.
That's true. That's true. Um, but yeah, I think that, yeah, there's already pressure on the marathon, and then that sometimes the dopey goofy of it all, like it just adds more, and it's up to you to determine if that's something that you want to have. And
Mhm.
for some people, again, as we've talked about, some people it's motivating. It lights that fire of like, yep, I gotta slay it all. Like, and sometimes the slay, it looks like, hey, I had a blast and I had so much fun on this course, and that's how I plan to train, and that's how I did things. And in some ways it does mean like absolutely running your little pants off, which good for
Mhm.
you. If you do that for all 4 races, please let me know how you do that. Um
Yeah, one of my coworkers, that's what he did. He's a much more experienced runner than I am. He runs like ultra distances and such, and he went and did dopey because one of his friends talked him into it. He is used to like the time commitment and everything that comes with running those distances. And leading up to the dopey challenge, you and I mean, we were scared, but we were excited because it was gonna be fun, and he was like, "I'm never doing this again. This sucks." So, it just goes to show you that, like, it's not for everyone, but he also had the time of his life while he was there. He's like, "I committed, I'm doing this," and he rode Everest, he rode a bunch of rides. He took longer to finish the marathon than I did, and let me tell you, he is a much faster runner than I am. Like, leagues leagues faster than I am, proof of time runner, and but he took even longer, but he had such a blast. He has so many photos. So many.
I think I know which one you're talking about, because then I was scrolling through, I'm like, ooh, what were you doing? Because I see it by my photo pass, I'm like, ooh. um this is a hotly debated topic
Mhm.
in the top in is does doing dopey make your first marathon less special?
I think that's fully a matter of perspective for yourself because for some people, it's definitely like if you do your first marathon and you do dopey at the same time, will dopey overshadow your first marathon?
Mhm.
Will you only focus on dopey? And I can definitely see that perspective because although it wasn't my first marathon when we completed dopey, since my first one wasn't that, like, great. I mean, it was very exciting. I'm so proud of myself, but also, like, it didn't go well. Um, when we talk on social media and stuff and, like, I tell friends and whatever, like, I talk about Dopey because for me, the experience was Dopey, not the marathon by itself because all of it
Ooh.
like, all that was the when I signed up for Dopey, it was about the whole experience, like, I wanted all of that. I don't really talk to my coworkers about just how my standalone marathon went or just how my 10K was that day, although I do tell them about the weather. So,
True.
there is that. But whereas when I ran Chicago and just did my standalone, even though it went poorly and there was all kinds of different stuff to share about that experience, it was only about that one run. And I think I personally like what I chose of not having them together because even
Mhm.
if Chicago was a disaster, I I felt it was very special for me to be able to check that box on my bucket list or whatever, to have that experience and be for that full focus to be on that experience.
That's interesting.
Mhm.
That's very interesting.
Tell me, are you in the other camp, ma'am?
I actually don't know where I don't feel like Dopey overshadowed my first marathon because I think I was also so stoked
Yeah.
to get it that I don't feel like it was an overshadowing.
And it didn't
But
overshadow it from my experience when you ran it. I was so proud of you that you completed your first marathon. Like, to the point where I didn't like, back then, I didn't understand how the tracker worked or anything, and I texted you too early that "Yeah, you did it," and you were like, "I'm not there yet."
yeah, and I think that I still, especially having had that moment where I know I told this story before where, I had made a promise to my dad that I would finish a marathon in his honor. I did not tell anybody about that promise till mile 26 of the marathon. And then I had already loaded the message into my family group chat with my
Aw.
brothers and my mom, and I sent it when I hit mile 26. I'm like, today, like, this is a promise I made to dad. And it was actually right around his like cancer diagnosis versary,
Oh.
my first marathon. And I made this promise to him at the time. It was, I don't know, we just hit 10 years since he passed. And today is the day I fulfilled that promise. Because by mile 26, when I had like a good 20 minutes on the
You were
balloons, I'm like,
confident.
we're good. We're good, fam. Like I knew that I was going to I knew I was going to make it. So in my mind, it did not overshadow it at all. But I do think in a lot of ways that I do focus the most on the marathon part of the
Yeah.
experience when I talk to people. But
But maybe that's because that was what you chose to do. Maybe if I had chosen to do Dopey first, maybe I would still focus on the marathon because that would have felt they both feel like momentous accomplishments because they are. Um, but yeah, maybe that's just the way you experience it.
yes. And I think because remember then my second was Goofy and it what I we had the half the day before and
Mhm.
then we had the marathon and I think well that the half was fun and it was like good to be part of Run Disney lore. But there wasn't a whole ton to write home about. I mean, I had like I was with DW, oh, fab. Love you, DW. For some miles, I met a really nice lady who we were just chatting literally almost the whole race until I went to the bathroom in Epcot, and then I lost her for the last like mile and a half of the race. So like
Mhm.
there, it's like I say that in terms of like not a lot to write home about, but like like it was like more of like the connection I had with people, which like I'm not going to go back and talk to my boss about versus you know yeah, but I think that I mostly focus on like I think the most questions from other people come about the marathon. So maybe that's also another bias of like,
Yeah.
oh, a marathon in a lot of ways. Like, like when I have come home and talked to people about my dopey experience this year, it's been about the marathon. But
Mm.
also, I mean, there's the additional like bit of like, oh yeah, like you ran like this kind of a PR and you also did it at the end of dopey. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think my vote is that it does not make your first marathon less special.
No.
I think that it I think that in a way it does amplify it, but I mean, I have yet to do my first standalone full. So, I wonder kind of how that's gonna I mean, it's gonna
How
be
that will
such a
change.
It is going to be such a different experience, though, once I do my standalone full, because and I think you and I both have the perspective of you did Chicago first, and then you went to Disney for your marathon. So, like, when you had your first experience versus all 3 of my fulls have been at Walt Disney World.
Mhm.
My first experience doing a standalone full is going to be the Chicago Marathon because
It's gonna be a great experience.
so it's going to be such a different experience, like, great and energetic, and I've been told actually because I was
It's more
standing in the
energetic than a Disney race, honestly.
I was actually standing in the corral before the half with a perfect Dopey, and
Ah!
he and another lady who were saying to me, they're like, "Something I wish I knew before my first Chicago was that you need to don't like" it's like, "It's gonna be so hype, but like, you need to simmer down the first couple miles. Do not get yourself too, like, engrossed in the hype."
Yeah,
Like, like, experience the moments, but don't run too fast. Don't
which
go
is
too
what Ben
fast off
and
the
I
gate.
did.
Yes.
It's
My
hard. The
my
hype is
ears.
real.
So I'll be curious to see kind of where my perspective lies there. So I guess to summarize my point is that I have no my overall like take on this is that I have no regrets on how I did things and what it was for me.
Mhm.
Having now trained better for 2 marathons, I think I think that there's just what I learned from the experience and what I try to tell people because like obviously there's a way that and I try to like, cuz it's I end up writing the comment. I should just copy and paste it between like people for threads on Facebook in the Facebook groups, but I don't because it just comes from the heart of like these are things I wish I considered before my first Dopey. And having done it with my first marathon. The point of making my first marathon less special, no, that one never comes up. But just the different learning curve aspects of things, um, the the different learning curve aspect of things, the different, things that you learn and things that you know you really kind of want to be a part of. I usually am like cautiously optimistic. I'm just kind of like, here's what you should consider. The schedule is probably the biggest one, and that's probably the biggest I don't wanna call it error that I made, but things that I didn't realize what the reality of it would be when I signed up, and you can't until you experience it, right? Right, like, you can't know, like, what it's going to feel like to do 8.5 and 20. Sorry to pick on that sim, but I love you 8.5 and 20, but I'm not picking on you, but you can't know what it feels like to do that until you're in it. And you can't know what it feels like to have to be staring down the barrel of 4 days of back-to-backs until you're in it. And if you're like me, you didn't do that until this dopey. Oops. Oops. S
Yeah. I think, if you were hoping for, like, a clear-cut answer, sorry, because that's not
Yeah.
what's happening. But I don't know that I would I think if you genuinely wanna have, like, a really good experience, depending on your depending on what your current level is, then I don't know that I would personally recommend Dopey as your first marathon because I just think that is a whole like, I genuinely worry that if you jump straight into Dopey as your first marathon, that the the amount of training that is required may scare you away from distance running where you might have enjoyed it previously because it's such a drastic change from going, even from going t running, like, challenge weekends at Disney up to Dopey, the change from that or from a standalone half training, it's a very drastic change, and I feel like you could get scared very, very easily. And I want everyone to have a positive experience, but also I'm very much the kind of person that is like, go hard or go home sometimes of like, I'm going to push myself. I'm very competitive, so I'm going to push myself hard and I choose big goals for a reason. Um, and if you are that kind of person and that motivates you, then go for it. Just be
Ooh.
smart. Don't hurt yourself, please. That's my like, I really just don't want people to hurt themselves, and I want you to find I want it to be a fun experience. I don't want you to put pressure on yourself so that it's not like how before we started enjoying Run Disney, I hated running because I had all this other expectations of myself that didn't need to be there.
Yeah, that's so true. Oh man, I had like 8 follow-up questions pop into my head,
Oh, go for
during
it.
that entire thing. Okay. So, because one of the things that you hit on of like kind of like like it kind of went with the go big or go home thing, which definitely I'm a
Mhm.
go big or go home baby. Um, of
Gotta hold
like
it back
take
though sometimes.
yes, yes. Because I know it probably also depends on how you view different races, where some people are like, "I do a marathon, I'm done."
Mhm.
Maybe I wanna do a Dopey eventually because that's a different thing, but, like, if I do Walt Disney World, like, check box, that's done, right? Versus, like, I'm more of a I enjoy, like, what I like about an experience. I enjoy Run Disney, where nothing about running down Main Street the way we just did this weekend to the castle for a half will ever get old
Yeah.
for me. There is nothing that will. So I remember having a conversation with my older brother, and for context with my older brother, he's fast, y'all. He's fast. He has run 1 marathon. He ran Chicago in 2013. He ran like a 3:35 or 3:37, and he hasn't had no desire to train for another marathon since. He, um, he probably puts in more mileage than I do, but homeboy, he's like, "Yeah, my watch kinda stopped working, so I just kinda free ball it when I go out for a run." I'm like, he's like, "Yeah, I just kinda go by feel." I'm like, So homie
Me, not
yeah.
me, because my watch died not running, just, like, out and about in life yesterday, and I was like, "I don't know how to function."
Oh, yeah, no, it's like a immediate, like, I'm gonna throw a fit, like, not at anybody, but, like, to myself, like, that the watch is not watching. Anyway, so my older brother and I, because 'cause I'm, like, trying to wheedle him I'm trying to wheedle both of my brothers into, at least thinking about Run Disney, if not, like, group marathons.
Family occasion.
Yeah, family marathons. But he had said to me, he's like, "Oh, well, now that you've done flirt, like, you can just take the show on the road." I'm like versus, like, my opinion is that, like, "Oh, I'm gonna keep doing this. I'm gonna keep doing this, like, over and over again, like, until I get tired of it, until I don't want to or I can't anymore." So, um, I think that's something because then some people, like going 0 to 100 in that way of, like, "Oh, like" I don't know, I think that that's something for you, the listener, to
Mhm.
consider of, like, are you somebody who wants to, like, build up to what that is for, like, 4 years or, a couple
Mhm.
years over? Is that something you wanna do? And, like, once you feel ready, that's totally a valid perspective to have. Or are you somebody who's, like and then okay, here's the thing, though, is that I feel like a lot of people are like, "Yeah, no," like, for me, it was like, "Well, I wanna do Dopey at least once, so, like, why not do it with your first marathon?" That's a very popular opinion of,
Yeah,
like,
it's a very popular line of logic.
it's a very popular one, and then you know what we all do? We go, "Well, just put purple and green, tattoo one on each butt cheek because 'cause I'm in. I'm so down, like, this is my life now," right? Like,
Mhm.
everyone's like and that was part of my logic. I'm like, "What if I hate training for a marathon?" Like, I wanna but then, like, because then you would know you hate training for a marathon and then you do Dopey, and, like, you
Mhm.
would have Dopey as a bucket list item. Yeah, no, that's, you
That's not
forget about all first of all, you get forget about all the bad parts.
you do.
You do. Um, you forget about all the bad parts, and even though I now have, like, several recordings of me saying, "I am gonna think about it before I sign up for it next year because of the Omaha winter, and I don't like the running in the icy cold and stuff." I'm still gonna do it. Like, of course I'm still gonna do it. I'm gonna whine about summer running too, and then I'm still gonna do it. So I don't know. I guess, like, it kinda depends on kinda you, like, personality-wise and, like, kind of, like, how you wanna do the build. Obviously, it all depends on you. Like, I'm not telling you to do either. I'm just saying I wanted to kind of cover some of the considerations and, like, and maybe it would be kinda helpful for me to talk about the afterglow of that first Dopey.
Mm.
So 2023, 2024 after Dopey was supposed to be the year of the half. That was
I mean,
supposed to be the season of the half
you
marathon.
got really close.
Because I was signed up for Wine and Dine and Disneyland and Princess, and I was doing all the races at those weekends, but, it was like, I really wanna focus on the half marathon. this lasted I remember thinking about marathon weekend, and this kinda goes back to my mindset of thinking about marathon weekend when registration came around, and went, "Nope, that's just not how that's not gonna work this year, with the wedding and whatnot." And, registration at that time was in April. Get a few months into summer running, and I'm chomping at the bit for another marathon.
FOMO.
And to the point where I'm looking at, like, a local, like, full that like, I'm looking at a local full, and I'm like, "I don't think I really wanna be at 13 in the next, like, week because I'm not quite there yet." I'm, like, around, like, 8, and that's, like,
Big jump.
in order to be ready for too big of a jump to be safe. And, so actually, like, if you're sitting here and maybe this isn't the target of, like, to do it, to not to do it, because 'cause you're coming off a Dopey, and you're coming off of a whatever. And, like, you've already made that decision, you either did it or didn't, thank you, Yoda. But, it's kinda normal to be like, "I don't wanna do that again right now."
Mhm.
It's very normal to come off of training with, like, "Yeah, I'm good, fam." So that's kinda where my mindset was, and kinda leads me into a question for you, Hannah. And this is not a commitment to anything, but what are you I know we've talked about it a little bit, but what are you thinking for marathon weekend for next year?
Wow, what a lead up. You said you had, like, 8 questions and you told an entire story. I
I
love you.
know. Yes. I mean, they were, like, weaved together. I condensed because some of them were, like, little sub questions, and then I figured out ways in my head as I was speaking to condense them, so boom.
Um, we still haven't solidified that because generally big things, like, for me, because now I have accomplished Dopey and marathons and stuff, those going to Orlando is a big financial commitment,
Yeah.
and so Ben and I tend to, at least once a year, we wanna do some big goal together. So marathon weekend is naturally probably that now, and I I think he's leaning towards standalone marathon. I am undecided between Goofy and standalone marathon. What we really want to, accomplish, I guess, with this is we kind of miss a little bit of what we had our very first Run Disney weekend of only having to wake up one time
Mhm.
and not having to take a million vacation days, but still getting to have like a few really solid days in the park, and it still feels like vacation. Don't get me
Mhm.
wrong, it still feels like vacation when you're there, but there is something to be said about, especially by my coworkers, about like if you're waking up at 2 a.m. every single day while you're there, like, is it really vacation? But we kind of miss the simplicity of a
Mhm.
standalone race. So I'm torn because I'm a sucker for extra medals. So Goofy is very appealing. And I'd like to sport the other bib. So I'm torn right now, but probably those two. I'm not like I would totally do Dopey, but also with like trying to get a house and all these other goals we have on the horizon as well. Like we gotta reel in some of the mouse money.
That is fair. That is fair.
What about you? Do you have any feelings? I know you said, like, sort of earlier that you were undecided, but do you have any
Oh
gut feelings?
Oh, I have feelings, to say the least. I think that my answer would probably be different if I weren't running Chicago in the fall,
Yeah.
because I think my biggest hiccup right now to committing to another Dopey, and obviously I'm Club Run Disney, so I gotta figure this ish out a little bit faster. Um,
Are you worried
bec-
about burnout?
I am a little worried about burnout. I'm a little bit worried that I'm gonna run Chicago and I'm gonna have like a ball, and
Mhm.
then having to get back into like 17, 20, like stuff like that is going to burn me out a
It
little
is a
bit.
lot because the training block for a marathon, you know, not including base training, if you're maintaining a good base, then maybe you jump into 12 weeks, which is still 3 months. That's still a
Yeah.
long time. But when we talk about Dopey, usually we're talking more about like a 6-month time frame because we do generally kind of count some of our base training in. And if you're following Galloway, it's a lot longer. Um, and if you're going to do that, preparing for a standalone marathon where I know you want to hit it and you want to crush it. And then you're gonna jump right back. You like there won't be any break. You'll just jump back into long runs again. There has to be some break because you don't wanna hurt yourself after like, it's a
Mhm.
lot, but that means you're going from that's in October, November, December. That's like another 3 months. You're basically almost a whole year, 3/4 of a year marathon training.
Yeah. And especially I've mapped out if I use Galloway for Chicago to train. My first training week is the
Is it,
first
like,
week in
next week?
April.
Oh, okay.
It's the first week in April, and again, that's my base building. That's base building, so I don't know. However, do I think also because most coaches, our coach included, is like, okay, what's your A race?
Mhm.
And if I make my A race Chicago, and then I decide I'm doing because the thing is also, if you're in case you're wondering at home, the difference between training for Goofy and training for Dopey is 9 miles.
Yeah,
It's
it's
a
not
4 mile
much.
run and a 5 mile run that are back to backs. Mental load, we can talk about that a different time, but because I can attest to what it's like, but and the difference is, however, the actual training itself, it's not that much different. So, um I don't know. If I think that my A race is going to be Chicago and
Punch
I'm
it.
gonna rip it. I already know it's a flat, fast course. And then, hot summer running leads to fall PRs, and that I think that would just be like the way to just, I don't know, to do it, just rip it.
Mhm.
Anyway, if I think that that's going to be my A race, does that almost allow me later on, if I decide to do Dopey, that I'm going to be chilling like a villain for the marathon? Do I possess the capability mentally to do that? Maybe not. But am I going to kind of be like, okay, well, we're just trying to get this done because my body is still broken from Chicago?
Do you wanna
S-
feel like that, though? Of just trying to get it done for 3 months?
I don't mean that as a bad thing because
Oh,
that's
okay.
how I went. That's no, no, no. That's a good clarifier because that's how I got into my first dopey. And I was just like, you know what? We're just trying to get through this in one piece
Yeah, I mean
because of everything that had gone wrong.
and that's what I said about Dopey is I just wanna be happy and healthy. I'm just trying to get through this essentially. I mean, not get through because it was joyous. Sometimes get through it does have a negative, and I
Yeah,
want you need to decide for yourself which one it is. Is it a negative or a positive to be just getting through something?
true. True, true, true. So I think, I don't know, I have a lot to think about. I think my gut feeling, if I had to register right now,
Yeah,
um, that I think I would pick Goofy.
yeah.
I think I would pick Goofy. I think that one benefit to the standalone marathon that, like, I think we've maybe touched on, but not fully, is that remember how we talked about there being pressure on the marathon? Like, in terms of like shenanigan land,
Mhm.
if you're doing the standalone full, you don't like there's a little bit less it's not like your dopey and goofy medals aren't riding on it. You're doing the standalone full in
Mhm.
terms of like, like
Start
I
or
would
not. I mean, finish or not, you get that medal.
yeah, you gotta start. But in terms of like you get like stuck on Everest, which is my nightmare, is that like you're stuck on Everest and you had a good buffer, but like you that ate most of your buffer. Like you just gotta finish. You just gotta get to the finish line. And I know I'm fast enough to just like whip it if I need to. Bye. And stuff like that. So there is that kind of like
Mhm.
that pressure is a little bit reduced in terms of again shenanigan land.
Yeah, if you're
Um
in that position.
if you're in that position. I know there are plenty of people who are like, Dopey doesn't stop me from shenanigan land, Tony.
But there's also plenty of people who are, like, in their pace are just trying to finish without any shenanigans, so
for sure.
and we're here for you too.
Oh yeah, for
Good
sure.
for you.
Yes. So I think that if like the registration was open and I had 10 minutes to claim it, I have a week, but if I had 10 minutes to claim it right now, I think with what I know now, pre-princess, so assuming everything is fine through princess, that I would probably do Goofy. Because I think in my brain, I think that I have this cadence of every other year Dopies.
Yeah.
Um, I have this like mental cadence, and I don't really know why I decided upon that. Um, I don't really know kind of in if it's actually even like realistic or if like we will like break the mold. Because if I keep missing beautiful purple shirts for the Dopey shirt, for the
Ugh.
included shirt, I'm gonna be so sad. I don't think it was the year before mine either, but I had the blue one and now I like the yellow shirt. I know that's controversial, but I like it. He's cute. But it's the beautiful rich purple that I missed in 24. That's beautiful. What I imagine of out of a Dopey shirt. Anyway, I don't know. So if you can't tell, if you're confused right now on like what you're doing, this is why we're having this conversation 2 weeks before general registration or a week before Club Run Disney registration, because there's a lot of feelings, there's a lot of things to weigh with what the decision is and what obviously it ultimately comes down to whatever is best for you.
Mhm.
But there's a lot to weigh, and I think that kind of coming from the and, I also don't mean to scare you at all, like, I hope that that doesn't come off as like, "Oh my god," because obviously, like, I don't know, 2022 me who went in and signed up for Dopey, like, girl was naive a little bit, like, I, like, considered what I had, but obviously you can't have all the facts in front of you when you sign up for something that far in advance. You have all the facts that you have, and you make the decision based on the facts that you have at the moment, but, like, like you have a little bit of faith, trust, and pixie dust in yourself. Pixie dust is not a training plan, first of all, or do not mistake that. But a little bit of faith in yourself of like it's going to be all fine. Like as long as I do my due diligence, I put the work in. That it's going to be fine. So I want like things to ruminate on for you yourself as you're running or even not running. If you need a break these next couple weeks, please take it.
Mhm.
Like I see I don't know. I can't even tell you most times that that I register for a Dopey if I actually go for a run that day or a marathon or of any sort that I actually go for a run that day purposefully. Take the break that you need and kind of just let it sizzle, let it cook. Think about it.
Let it marinate.
Yeah. Any other kind of final parting thoughts?
Nope. Just as I said at the beginning, use your resources, think about it, and make the right choice for you.
Yep. And if that choice is not Dopey, we obviously love you. We love you if the choice is not a marathon. That's another big one is that
We
a
support you
marathon.
regardless, even if it's not running anything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. A marathon is also not the end all be all. If you would look at 26.2 and go, absolutely not, like, right? Like, you're not any less of a runner if, like, it's no, like, it's just because the marathon is what holds like, holds the clout or whatever.
Socially.
Remember,
Yeah.
yes, socially. My brother runs, again, homie isn't tracking, but he runs probably more than I do. I wouldn't call myself more of a runner than him because I've done 3 marathons and he's done 1. Like, yes, sibling competitiveness, I might rip on him a little bit. But, in terms of it's not like any of us we're just different.
Mhm.
We're different. We're different and we have different enjoyment levels and we have different goals that we have. So his is not training for anything specifically right now. I don't know if he's done a half, to be quite honest with you. I don't think he has. He has no desire to because I talked to him about it recently as I'm trying to wheedle him and my younger brother into maybe even doing like wine and dine. Not that ship has sailed for next year, but meaning prior or next year, a future year. He's not really training for anything right now, but it doesn't make him like any less of, homie likes to put his shoes on, get out and run. So don't feel like we're even like pushing marathon in general because it is totally good. And honestly, I really respect it if you like kind of look at it and was like, that is past my limits. Good for you. Honestly, good for you. Cause I wish I were that smart. Me dumb.
Oh.
Me like marathon. Me like 26.2. I have not learned from my ancestors, the Greeks, and realize that what happens to a Greek person when they run a marathon is that they die.
Do you know that's a myth? That's not real.
I know it's a myth and not real, but it's too funny to not include. Also, I think it's the back and forth like a couple times that did it. Also, because the marathon wasn't 26.2 at the time. That was the
26 point.
early,
Yeah, it was decided by the Queen of England.
it was the Queen of England because it was I think it was went from 25 to 26.2 in the one of the very earliest Olympics in the 1900s. I think
Mhm.
I want to say 1908, but that might be wrong. But that was when the marathon distance became 26.2. So whenever you feel like you're in pain at mile 25 of a marathon, you can thank the British monarchs of the early 1900s and the early 20th century for that.
Well, we hope this has given you something to ponder, and we wish you luck and registration coming up.
Yeah, let us know what you think and what kind of like what you're weighing on. Bounce some ideas off us in terms of like what you're thinking of. And we'd be happy to kind of chat with you if you need somebody else to make the decision for you.
A great conversation topic for the Facebook group.
Indeed. Well, I think that's an episode. If you enjoy listening to our show, please leave us a review and a 5-star rating. We love reading your reviews out loud, and you might even be featured on a future podcast episode. We have a community spotlight on our Instagram at Stride Sisters Podcast. If you want to be featured for a Mental Monday, Finish Line Friday, or any accomplishment that you want to celebrate, send us a picture via our social media platforms or our email. And to continue the fun, join us on our Facebook page. All those ways to connect with us can be found in the show notes. Thanks for listening. Until our next adventure, we're wishing you endless miles of magic and memories. See you next time. And here we have Secret Sounds with Natalie.
1 second, my realtor's calling me. Hello? Hi. I'm good. Should I get Ben? Okay, 1 second.
We're going to have to leave this in as a secret sound. Maybe not like the whole thing, but like. There's a world of laughter, a world of tears. There's a world of hopes and a world of fears. It's so much that we share, and it's time we're aware. It's a small world after all. Oh my God, imagine Trap Small World. Except like they'd really have to commit. None of this like just like a couple beats, like it's got to commit. This is like a treat for Hannah to listen to later while she's editing. That she obviously is on the phone doing things. And what else unhinged can I... Okay, what else can I talk about while we're waiting? She's going to be so confused because the way that you can see the audio things, because sometimes I can guess where we cut before we do like our outro or whatever stuff, peek behind the curtain. And like I can guess based on like the wavelengths because I'm a nerd. So, or I can tell when I'm real excited. Anyway, but she's going to be like, beep, 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 beep. Like she's going to go through in chipmunk mode and she's going to be like, okay, there's this big audio file. Like, where did this happen? And it's just going to be me. So sorry, I effed up your editing speed. But this is for your enjoyment. And if you, the listener, are hearing this, it's because it got added as a secret sound. And I'm sorry / you're welcome. I think I have some like Disney hot takes, but they're lukewarm at best. Oh my God, wait, I've never gone on this rant before. Okay. The parents from The Parent Trap versus the parents from Home Alone. Okay. So I think that Nick Parker is the worst of them all. And that is the dad from The Parent Trap. I think Nick Parker is absolutely the worst.
Are you talking to yourself?
Oh, I am. You're gonna have a really fun time. You can choose your own adventure for Secret Sounds.